Well, buckle your seatbelts and put on your oxygen mask. This one is going to move quickly. This conversation was with Dennis Allen, who was a fighter jet pilot. His dream job and a medical problem took all of that away. And so he really moved into the commercial world. He is a 6-time turnaround CEO, and he's helped Wall Street-backed companies in trouble get back on track. But as he was doing this, Dennis noticed something. He noticed that Christ followers were experiencing identical kinds of struggles and symptoms across the country. He kept seeing a lot of Christians who were walking out on their faith. He calls them the nuns, the duns, the deconverted, and ex-evangelicals. He was asking this question of why are there so many who still claim Christianity, acting as if they are on mute or inert or just not even willing to talk about Jesus outside their church walls. And his conclusion is that Western discipleship has been hacked, and it's something that is missing. There is a dilemma that's going on. We talked about his experience and really what he's doing in the church today to bring back health and vitality in places where it's lacking. And I think that you're going to enjoy it. Listen up. This is Dennis Allen, The Disciple Dilemma, on the Life After Ministry podcast. Dennis Allen, welcome to the Life After Ministry podcast.
Matt, amped up to be with all you guys.
I have a feeling that we're going to be flying at Mach 5 here during this time together. And I want to really just jump into, you are really doing ministry, but this was not your original trajectory. How did you get here?
Yeah, my resume looks like an attention deficit disorder, you know, when you kind of take a look at the ramblings through life. But military career out of college, from the military, then into the business world. And I'm hanging out with, all the dark-hearted people on the Wall Street scene doing turnarounds of corporations. And along the way, involved in churches and business, I'm seeing a phenomenon that I think is key, biblical, and strategic to the health of the church and to the pastors that serve them. And that's kind of the short setup for what I hope we scrimmage today.
Yeah, so you were flying in the military and you're flying airplanes and you get taken out, and that really does change the course and trajectory of what you're doing. How did you start getting involved in churches, and what did you start to see?
Well, early on in my life, with great parents who forced me at gunpoint, literally, to church, right? And then slowly helping to walk me into my understanding of who is Christ, connecting with people who are mentors. Early on in my life, think just my early high school years, I had pastors grabbing me by the lapels and saying, "You are coming with me. You're going to make a choice. You're either going to park it or drive it for Christ. Here's where we're going." Into college, I've got a fantastic mentor who was a pastor who started taking me with him to go meet people, see sick people, folks who had questions about their faith. And he said, "I don't care whether you're a pastor or not, but I do care whether or not you can keep the cookies on the low shelf and help people understand who is Jesus and how do you follow him and what does it mean to be a disciple," on into in the military. Great people who are mentoring, dragging me literally, again, almost at gunpoint, like, "You're coming with me to follow Christ." And here we go in work together and then business together. And so it's this oddly biblical model, Matt, of people who said, just like Jesus, you're coming with me.
Follow me, and I'm going to show you. We're going to make you fishers of men. And so you start to see the church as you come out of flying out of the military. You start to see the church. And what is the gap? What is the problem that you start to see, this through line that is taking place in the church in America?
The symptoms were the first things that got my attention, and today they're pretty widespread. If you poke around a little bit on the internet, you'll see a lot of them. Some of them highly scholarly articles, and some of them are just speculation. But if you think about Matt Davis and Jim Graham's latest book, The Great De-Churching, 40 million people who are millennials and Gen Zs raised in the church have walked away from their faith. When you think about, and I've even heard you use this statistic on some of your conversations, 300,000 churches, roughly 150 million people in the U.S. claim to be believers. About 50 million go to a Protestant church on any given Sunday, about half of them going to a mega church. 40 million people have walked out on their faith. And statistically, it looks like they're not coming back when they have kids, which is a common thing. Now, those kind of statistics, when you look at the idea that 90% of the people who are left in the pews, the folks that did not walk out, say, hey, talking about Jesus, that's not my job. That's Matt's job when he's in the pulpit. Hey, it's not in my willingness nor my equipping to be worried about who Jesus is. The hard questions go to him. 80% of the people in the pews, these are statistics you see in the scholarly work, saying, I don't have a Bible study. I only go to church 1.7 times a month. I have no close fellowship with anybody. I'm perfectly happy. And then 60% of the people that you survey saying, I'm doing really great as a disciple of Christ, with those kinds of stats on the board. When you look at that, those are the symptoms. It's not the cause. There's a biblical explanation for the cause. And that's why the disciple dilemma as a conversation began to emerge. Actually, when I was in Oxford, England, talking with a group of people at the Oxford Center for Christian Apologetics, spent a summer there with some great folks. And they said, you're going to write a book about this problem. And I said, I don't write books. I'm not writing a book. And they said, yeah, you're going to write the book. So we're trying to talk about, first look at the symptoms. Then can you see the cause? And that's where we want to deep dive this, I think. And then from the cause, what then do I do about it?
Yeah, so you identify a few groups, and I want to jump into the cause eventually. But these groups, the nuns, the duns, the deconverted, and ex-evangelicals, tell me about these folks. And have they always been with us?
You know, if you look at the statistics over a historical frame of, let's just say, 1,800 years, yeah, they've always been with us, but in far smaller numbers than we've seen before. So statistically, you might have been able to argue that 20, 30% of the church has always been in churn. I was raised in the church. I walked out of the church. What you would see is about half of that statistic from 1,800 years back forward, as long as we've got records, they have kids, they show back up. The nuns, meaning I no longer am affiliated with any Christian particular church. The duns, I'm completely done with my faith, want nothing to do with it. The ex-evangelicals, your model, you evangelicals, is wrong. The deconverteds, your faith in general, your philosophy in general, the reality of God, Jesus, or the others, is wrong. Those are kind of general buckets, have amped and ramped to the point that today, if you're thinking about the general population, 65% of folks who identified as Christians have walked away. And if I pick on 45 and below down to around 25, we're looking at numbers north of 80% raised in the church have walked out. They are the nuns, the duns, the deconverts, the debaptized, the deconstructors.
So what do you think the impact and effect of COVID is in all of this? Did it actually change the church, or did it reveal what was already there?
I think your revelation point is very useful. You know, when we think about concepts like the pruning constructs in the Bible, I think you just had some wind there shaking a lot of, branches that were going to fall off anyway. These were the folks who were already casual. Now, of course, a lot of people couldn't attend and they were worried about attending and so on. Pick your philosophy on how you deal with the pandemic. But what you saw in COVID was basically a culling of some who would never be able to come back because of pathological reasons. They couldn't afford to come back and get sick. But the far larger majority, think 80% of the people who exited the church just said, it's more fun in my pajamas online, or just don't even bother to get up and worry about it. So that's about all we really saw there. What was happening with the deconverts, the duns and the nuns? These stats go all the way back before the pandemic, and they were ramping very rapidly.
So have people left the church? I find that even this up and coming generation, there is a lack of trust in institutions, whether the institution is government, whether the institution is a church. Are they just staying home and they are curating their own spirituality, or have they just really kind of pulled the plug altogether?
If you think about the word you just used, I'm absolutely in love with the direction we're taking the conversation. So the institution, the brand, the venue is destroying, if that becomes the primary system of delivering our Christianity into the culture, it's destroying, it's eclipsing, it's putting a glass ceiling over people's ability to really encounter the full call of Christ. This is where we get into the idea of discipleship. So the problem problem really rests on the fact that we have foisted on pastors sort of a corporate Wall Street version of how you do church. You have a brand. You have market share growth we're expecting. We're looking for the cash flow. We're looking for the butts in the seats. We're looking for the baptisms. And if you don't hit these metrics, Pastor, well, maybe you need to contact Matt Davis because we're going to be transitioning you out nicely or not so nicely. That's one piece of the puzzle. The other piece is, look at the load that I'm putting on Matt Davis to be the solo CEO who's responsible for every single meeting, every single disciple, every single spiritual event that happens. This is an unworkable model in the corporate world. This is an unworkable model in the church.
I once was approached by a group of elders that said, Matt, we think that you're a 5-tool player. And in sports, this is the guy that can hit and bat and steal bases, all this stuff. And that was the expectation. They said, we'd like to bring you on in a senior leadership role for a church. And we want that because we think that you can do it all. And it's both on one side, very flattering to be able to be seen and to have these skill sets that might be helpful for an organization. And then at the other side, I was thinking I don't know if I want to do all of this. And that expectation, we talk to a lot of people that they love the Word of God, they love preaching, but they don't love everything about that. But the expectation is there. And so that's where we see, these Barna stats that, there's this vast majority that are thinking about quitting and just pulling the plug altogether. How do we change that?
I think one thing that we do is we stop delivering concierge Christianity. We stop setting up this process where I show up with the kids, drop them in the program, grab my latte, sit in the bench while Matt gives me the TED Talk and Coldplay's up there on the stand giving me some great praise work, right? This is a problem for us. We have tried to take an institution that was designed to serve a mission, and we're now forcing the mission to serve the institution. In other words, what was supposedly a gathering of disciples whose sole exclusive mission is to go into the world and make disciples through this gathering and through the ministries and extensions. We've flipped it. And what we said is the mission is to serve the brand and the growth, the popularity and the influence, the cash flow and the capital structure of an organization that happens to be a local church. That is a completely inverted model against the biblical model Jesus gave us. And so what I'm trying to say is, in a way, I'm a corporate CEO. I go into broken corporations. I spend several years with them helping to get them well. And these are corporations owned by Wall Street investment banking firms. And I find a common script there, and I find the same common script in my leadership experience in churches. It is that nobody understands what the real mission is, largely. They've foisted all the responsibilities on the pastor or the CEO, and they expect them to fix everything when that's not the model that Jesus gave us. That's where we've got to take this conversation. Leaders, you have a job, yes, to individually disciple people, but you have a job also to create a culture, an environment that's based on the mission of disciples who make disciples who make disciples, not programs, seminars, capital budgets, and baptisms. That's not your job.
So you might not know this about me, but I'm Jewish. And
I know that.
You do know that. All right.
I do know that. I've creeped your webpage, dude. I know that.
Word has gotten out. Well, we can't keep it hidden anymore. But what's interesting, what I love about Jesus is he always is flipping the table and flipping the script. And whereas the first century model was you follow a rabbi, you are in the dust of a rabbi, you would pursue and you would beg to be one of his followers, one of his disciples. Jesus really flips the script and says, I want you, in a very similar way that you were discipled at gunpoint, you're going to come follow me. But really, it's this call to leave everything and to start walking, and you're doing ministry alongside. What does that look like in our 21st century context?
Let's take your Hebrew illustration for a minute and unpack that. There were 3 phases to Old Testament discipling that were precisely what Jesus used. And I'm getting the head nod already from Matt, so I think he already knows exactly where I'm going. 3 phases. The Bet Sefer. Think about that as the elementary school of discipleship. Usually kids, but it can be any new believer walking in the door. The Bet Midrash. Think about that as your undergraduate work. I am watching Matt. I'm learning how to imitate and speak and talk like Matt. I'm learning how Matt interacts in certain situations in a laboratory environment. And the Bet Talmud. And the Bet Talmud is the really cool graduate level. Matt is taking me out on the street in real life with other people, and I'm seeing how he does the come follow me. I'm seeing how he interacts in the difficult situations. And pretty soon in that graduate work, Matt grabs me by the arm and he says, now you go first, and I'm going to wave at you. I'm right here behind you for a little while. I'll be your wingman for a little while. And then you're solo, baby. And I want you teamed up with another wingman, and you guys go do that. And I'm going to start working on another wingman. The Bet Sefer, we do great in American Christianity. Absolutely fabulous. The teaching, the preaching, the resources we have, you can't beat it. The Bet Midrash, the stats suggest that somewhere between 9% of pastors and 3% of lay people have ever experienced the Bet Midrash. And we're down in the 2 percentage points when we get to the Bet Talmud. Ouch.
Yeah. So for pastors who are trying to bring their people along in this journey, that they've been accustomed to, well, just give me a program, it used to be a 12-week series, and now it's a 4-week series because people aren't going to stay around that long. How do we do that? Does that? I remember when I was entertaining this idea, I want to be a youth pastor. My youth pastor would take me along, and what my discipleship training was I went to Home Depot with him, and he showed me how he lived life and how he was talking to people in the checkout line, and this is what it looks like to do ministry, literally, physically, tangibly. How do we see that played out?
The first piece of this puzzle, where we said, can you see the symptoms? Do you want to talk about the causes? We've just talked about a couple of those a moment ago. But when you start looking at how do I deal with this? Just for the sake of brevity today, I'm going to say just a few little things, and you can probe this. The first thing we have to understand is, do you think there's a problem? Because if you don't think there's a problem, life goes on, and Matt keeps on encountering people in pastoral transition, and it's just life goes on. However, is it possible your church has the wrong mission? Is it possible you've been raised in a tradition that said the tradition is really about evangelism, which I would argue is a subset of being a disciple, not the preeminence, right? So first of all, is there a problem? Secondly, are we on the right mission? Third, as we think about this, you got to go first, Pastor. You have to start the example. We can look at examples like 2 Chronicles, 2 Kings, King Josiah and his priest Hilkiah, right? They had to start cold. They'd never been discipled. Nobody discipled them. And they go, what are these books? What do I do with these books? What am I supposed to be up to here? And they go, tear the garments and let's go after this with all of our heart, mind, soul, and strength. And it's not going to be perfect, but that's what we're supposed to do. Even if it's a cold start, you first. And this is the point that we have to make to everybody in full disclosure. This is not a microwave pizza. This is going to be some time to change a culture through your leadership. You're going to probably have to disciple your leaders. But the great thing about this is the path to the unload of the tremendous compression and fracturing that we're doing to pastors' lives today. This is the unburdening. As we build disciples and delegate out to what disciples are supposed to be doing, I'm not expecting you, Matt, to carry the entire ball, make everything happen, be the solo artist for success, and the rest of us just catch the talk. We got to think about, do we have the right mission? I got to go first, and then I have to expect my leaders to go make disciples who make disciples, and then they're going to take that out further and deeper.
I think most people who are in the church today are gathered around the Sunday show, and we don't really live this out the rest of the week. I know lots of people who would say, I kind of feel like I live like an atheist the rest of the week, Monday through Saturday, and I gear up for Sunday morning. And we do outsource and leave a lot of this work for the paid professionals. And there has to be an invitation. Maybe the pastor would not be so burdened and want to pull the eject button if they were multiplying and creating a scenario where we, the church, the body of Christ, Ephesians 4, we're really all doing this together in harmony.
We have forgotten our identity. We don't know who we are as individuals. And our traditions have said it's all on Matt. Pastor Matt has all of the role in this for success. And it's a hub and spoke model that will crush the pastor. And eventually, my projection, as we even spoke in the book, is I think the long-term trajectory is what you're seeing in the great de-churching today. You ain't seen nothing yet. It will continue at a rapid rate. So the great hope for us is we have a model. We have a New Testament and an Old Testament model to go after this and address this if we're willing to think about what's our mission, me first, and expecting others to come along on this walk.
What are the similarities that you've seen over the years between broken churches and broken corporations that are not functioning? And how do you inspire when you come in as a CEO that's taking over to try to rehab a corporate situation? And what is something, if there is a pastor that's listening right now and they're struggling and they say, I don't know how much longer I can do this. If you're going to come in as a CEO or essentially as a pastor to be able to encourage them and say, you can actually turn this around. What are some of the signs of a healthy church? What does that look like?
We have foisted on you a model that says that the metrics are the most important thing when what you deserve is a chance to understand the true mission that you have. If you can really get at your mission, you can start reconstructing. Now, you're going to need support. You as a pastor, unless you've just walked in to start and plant a church and everybody's just listening to whatever you say, most of you are going to need about a 2 to 3 year process to get leaders deeply on board with the following. Number one, our identity is to be bondservants of Christ who make disciples, and we're going to start with us and we're going to go forward. But in that, I'm going to expect you boys and girls who are in leadership to get up out of your chairs, and you're going to start carrying a lot of this load. And my day job may be constructing sermons on Sundays, but all of us have the 24/7 job of being followers of Christ. And there is great liberation in that. In every corporation I've turned around, Matt, the challenge is the same. We lost our mission. The employees don't know who they are. They don't know why they're there, and they aren't going to stick around very long, and they're going to be very critical of management. Now, that becomes interesting when I think about it in the church, because today, churn in churches, tremendous. Expectations of the executive team to get everything done right, absolutely overwhelming and impossible. And we find ourselves with this dilemma, which is there's no hope for that model working until we all understand why we're here, because then my identity changes and I'm here for the right reasons, doing the things that Christ called me to do.
My sense is that people who are in the church who were not given a clear expectation from the get-go, the invitation was more, well, follow Jesus, go to church, and everything in your life is going to work out much better. This is a strong wake-up call, and the response, and I'm just curious, how do you get people to make that transformation to say, this is what you, we've made a mistake in how we've let you go too easy. We've all become flabby as a church, and how do we actually change that mindset to where lots of people are saying, like, oh, this is too hard. This is not what I signed. I just want to come and sip my latte in the back of the audience for 75 minutes, maybe 60 minutes. What you're asking is too much.
One of the causes that we list in the disciple dilemma is a thing we call optional lordship. And that is, I want Jesus to save me, but I don't need the lordship stuff. I'm good. I'll just become a member of a church. I'll be active in a Sunday school or a small group, and I'll go on a mission trip once every few years. And that makes me a disciple. The reality is, for pastors, we have to be able to help people realize, here's your identity. Now, if you just walk to the pulpit on a Sunday and you go, okay, everybody, new game plan. Everybody's got a new identity. Here's where we're going. Fatwa, follow this or die. Probably not going to work really well. But like it works in any other organization, commercial or Christian, you as a pastor have got to find one or two influencers, deep influencers in your church, come alongside them, sync up, and have them go start contaminating two or three more. You aren't going to do this in a 20-man men's group. You aren't going to do this in a seminar. You're not going to do it in a sermon series. It's life on life. If you can't do that, you can't transmit. So this is the you first part. When you begin that, this nuclear chain reaction begins through the DNA of the church. And a lot of people probably are going to get mad and walk out. and they may threaten you. But if you don't get this mission thing squared away, my prediction as an organizational guy, as a CEO, is it's only going to get tougher in the Christian church in the years ahead, not easier.
Yeah. Henry Nouwen, he says that we are often faced when it comes to being a leader in the kingdom, is that the temptation is that we can be instantly popular or ultimately respected. And to have this change and this flip-flop, I think people will feel like the rug has been pulled out from underneath them. It's interesting, though. I like that this is not going to be, we're going to stop on this Sunday and we're going to make an announcement and say we're doing everything different. It does have to be life on life, one person at a time. I had the opportunity last week to sit down with Gene Getz, who wrote Measure of a Man. And he said, really, the birth of that book and really the birth of this megachurch movement that happened in the Dallas area started with him just going through some of these chapters, life on life, in a really small group and just taking notes. And I don't know if we have the patience and the long-term perspective and view in the church to be able to sit with this when really this is truly a marathon.
It is truly a marathon. And I don't think we like marathons in America today. We like the credit card, instant gratification, short sprint, microwave pizza. We like those fast things when in fact, this is the legacy for your children, for your grandchildren, for your neighbors' friends, for the communities, for the hope for statesmanship to return in America. Discipleship is the core. This sounds crazy. Don't take a whack job's opinion. By the way, Matt let me on this podcast, so it's his fault. But this core issue in American Christianity is discipleship in its full ethos is missing. We've eclipsed it. We only do the Sefer. We aren't doing the Midrash. We're not doing the Talmud. We've got to change that.
I love that. You've written the book, The Disciple Dilemma. Take us through real quickly. What is it that we will get on the other side of this? And then tell us just about your ministry and how you're working.
Well, what we're trying to do is have a conversation with 3,000 out of 300,000 churches. That's our target point. And we are asking for, both in seminaries as well as churches, a deliberation over what really is the mission of the church. Is the mission of the church evangelism? Is the mission of the church community? Or is actually the mission given to us to be disciples and to progress other people, invite other people to be disciples? Is that the mission of every church or not? That's the core thesis. So the Disciple Dilemma is a leadership book saying, hey, leaders, you may, as Wilberforce would say, choose to look the other way, but you can no longer say you did not know. And to talk you through what symptoms you would see if you look, what causes are actually invisible underneath causing this problem, and how you walk this problem off your campus, because it begins locally. This is not going to be done nationally. It is a one-on-one, church by church, individual by individual effort. That's what the book's trying to accomplish with 3,000 churches. If I can get that, the 1%, that's my tipping point, I think, to start some serious thought about this.
Will you speak in closing? Will you speak to the pastor who's come out of ministry and they're trying to figure out, now that I'm not a pastor, what do I do with my life? How do I still live in this paradigm of discipleship outside of a vocational ministry position?
The first thing I would want to say is thank you very much, sincerely from the bottom of my heart, for the work that you put in, the sacrifices you put in. And I know this is trauma on your family. It has been a shockwave for you. Some of you are dealing with despair and just this continuing lingering sense of guilt. Was this my fault? Is this the way it worked? The statement I would like to make is we rigged it against you guys, and it's wrecking families who are pastors, and we need to get away from the rigged system back to the biblical model Jesus gave us. And in that, what I would suggest for you as pastors who have transitioned on, please consider the fact that as you pursue the vocational next, that your identity is in simply walking alongside some people, certainly your own kids, but friends around you, to help them consider the fact that Jesus expects us not to be Christians, but to be disciples. And in that identity change is great hope for you, your churches, and the future of our followers of Christ who are growing up today.
That's amazing. If somebody wants to connect with you and the ministry and the work you're doing, how do they find you?
www.thediscipleddilemma.com is our website. You can find us on YouTube, Instagram, Rumble, LinkedIn, Facebook, all those places too. Same thing, The Disciple Dilemma. And you'll find us out there scrimmaging this with churches, seminaries, and universities, and having a great chance to visit on ministries like this, Matt.
Dennis Allen, thanks for joining us on the Life After Ministry podcast.
Blessings, Matt. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the conversation, Dennis Allen. You know, what's interesting is as we are having these conversations, we're talking to pastors and leaders who are coming out of ministry and trying to figure out what are they going to do now? What are they going to do next? And really the opportunity that we have with pastoral transitions is we get to walk with these outgoing leaders in helping them try to figure that out. And really the course of action is a discipleship journey. We get to walk with them over these months and get to ask questions, leaning in on the areas of career and coaching and counseling. But it is an invitation to a journey to be able to say, there is hope. You are not out of options. And so we want to invite you, if you know someone who is struggling to try to figure out what is next, if they are in need of some people who will journey alongside them and say, we can help you. That's our heart really for pastoral transitions. And so send them our way. If you want to support somebody who is in transition that doesn't have the financial resources to be able to get the help that they need, go to pastoraltransitions.com and there's a donate button there and you can make a gift and we'll put that to work right away. There's a waiting list of people who need that help. So may wherever you go and whatever you do, may you be inspired. May you be walking with Jesus as you are leading others. And if you are in a season of needing help, that there are people here who will walk that journey with you. Be blessed.